Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Pressing Issues. Today is Sunday, July 5th, and today we're going to be talking about, let's see, what's on our list? Disney's technical difficulties. Geez, who would have thought? Among other things, Tokyo opening, the NBA moving in, and coronavirus issues at Disneyland. That's on our list, and maybe anything else you guys want us to talk about, put it in the chat. I'd like to welcome my panel today, Rich Grafton.
Hello, everyone.
Rich is somewhere that's closed right now, but seems to have people there yet anyways. We've got Rob Whiteside.
Hey, what's up, guys? Happy Sunday.
And a new face this week on Pressing Issues, Spencer Lloyd, our Tokyo correspondent.
Good morning. Happy Monday.
Yeah, coming to us live Monday morning from Tokyo.
From the future.
Yeah, I won't spoil it for you, but it's still as bad as it was yesterday.
Then we don't have much to look forward to tomorrow. Great. All right, so let's get things started off with my usual 15-minute rant at the beginning. And you could say my usual 15-minute rant about Disney's technical glitches. There's actually like 3 of them this week, believe it or not, and nothing went well for anybody trying to use anything on the Disney website to book things. But let's actually, before we even talk about booking things, how about Disney in March, when they first closed after the pandemic, came out and said, well, any pass holders on the monthly payment plan, we're just going to keep charging you through the pandemic. We don't care if you lost your job and can't pay, we're going to charge you anyway, and then later on we'll just extend your pass. And so after a week or two of uprisings, you could say, from the annual pass holder crowd, then they decided to say, all right, we're going to stop charging you during the pandemic. We'll refund whatever the last payment was that happened after the parks closed, and we'll just resume charging you the monthly rate after the parks reopen. Most people were okay with that. They gave you an option to cancel your pass outright and receive cancel your pass outright and just basically stop the monthly payments, or keep paying monthly after the parks reopen and your pass will be extended. People seem to be pretty happy with that. And then comes last week. Well, it's like 9 days till the parks reopen, and Disney's like, let's just start charging them now. They won't know. And not only that, people also were charged all of the months during the closure. Disney said, well, we'll resume your regular monthly payment after the parks open. Somehow that meant we'll charge you for 4 months, 9 days before the parks open. So there was quite an uproar of annual pass holders, especially in these difficult financial times when people's bank accounts were not able to handle several $100s in charges that weren't supposed to be there and went negative and got overdraft fees, and we heard all kinds of horror stories. Disney not coming out with any statement on the problems, but telling people who called in that it was a glitch. At first we thought they were just going to blame the pass holders and say, oh, you tried to come to the park before it was your turn, it's not a glitch. No, they admitted it was a glitch over the phone, but not in writing. And said those charges would be reversed, and thankfully some people have seen the charges getting reversed already, even though it's been a holiday weekend, so that's a good thing. Clearly, Disney's computer systems have got problems. If you didn't think that already, then next what happened was that we know the Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom open on July 11th, 6 days from today. So next Saturday, or this coming Saturday, the Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom open. And there were supposed to be some Passholder previews before the 11th. These Passholder previews, if you didn't read news sites like WDW, of course, you may not have known about the Passholder previews. And if you're a Passholder, you might have thought, well, Disney's going to email me ahead of time and let me know when registration opens for these Passholder previews. Didn't happen. So the Passholder previews opened, and they got filled in about 15 minutes. And that was before any pass holders received any kind of email from Disney that pass holder previews were even actually happening. So there you go. Number two way to piss off the pass holders in 1 week. Charge them when you're not supposed to, and then don't tell them about previews until after they're full. And then the third glitch of the Disney computer systems, dining reservations were supposed to open, starting for restaurants, starting July 11th, including restaurants in the theme parks that were open on July 11th. And so, naturally, those of us who had managed to get park reservations through the last glitch wanted to book some dining in the theme parks. And so people were supposed to be able to book dining if they had a resort reservation, but only if they had dining that was canceled from before. And that if you believed that Disney is able to use their computer system to figure out who had a dining reservation that got canceled due to the park closure, and then only let those people book dining reservations starting next week, if you thought that was actually going to be possible and Disney was going to be able to pull that off, well, then I've got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. So, of course, naturally, for example, me, who had a dining reservation that was canceled, was not able to book anything. My sister, who had a dining reservation that was canceled, was not able to book anything. Some people we know were able to book things. But yeah, we never kind of expected that was going to work out well, and it turns out we were right. So, those are that's the 3-pack of technical difficulties for this week. That Disney has shown once again that their IT department is top-of-the-line, top-notch IT department at a multi-billion-dollar company. The top entertainment company in the world has an IT department that lives up to its name of the top entertainment company in the world. No. I don't know how long this is going to go on. I tweeted in the middle of all that. I'm like, how long can this company continue to function with an IT department that is so messed up and creates so many problems and so many headaches for its customers that's to the point where it's actively making people not want to come visit the parks because their technology systems are so screwed up. I can't possibly see. First of all right, who's going to come to the parks on vacation and pay thousands and thousands of dollars when you have half of the experiences are closed or not happening, like fireworks and parades? Then you need to make sure somehow you have to be lucky enough to get a park pass to go to the parks the day you want. If you bought a park hopper ticket, well, that's useless because you can't park hop. And then you got to show up. There's no fast passes. Then you got to show up. You can't make dining reservations. Who's going to come? There's no way I would spend a lot of money to come. Luckily I have an annual pass. I've got places to stay, so it doesn't cost me a lot of money. But airfares from Philly are like $45 each way now. So it's like, less than the cost of a nice dinner. I can go to Disney for the week. But if I was spending thousands of dollars, there's no way on earth that I would be going to Disney right now. And with these many glitches and not being sure that I could get park reservations or dining reservations, it's not worth the hassle. mean, there's plenty of other vacations you could take, and this is coronavirus or not. Like, regardless of coronavirus, there's plenty of other vacations you could take where it's not so much of a hassle, that the company that you're giving all this money to wants to make it easy for you to come and visit them and enjoyable, and not make you jump through hundreds of hoops to actually come and enjoy yourself and spend money with them. So anyway, that's my diatribe for the week. I will turn it over to the rest of the panel. I don't know if you guys had tried to make any dining reservations or anything, or AP preview reservations or anything. But I'll turn it over to you guys. Let us know what you think.
Let me, if I could jump in real quick, I will say that, you said, well, who's going to want to go to Disney? Well, me. I'm still, no matter whether they're glitches or whatever, I'm still going to want to go, and it just is an unfortunate thing that we continue to see problems with Disney on tech side, because every time it happens, and I've said this on the show, it's like, well, maybe tomorrow won't suck, and then it does. And, it always proves us right. Which is a shame. But I also feel like this happens with other companies. I mean, Apple has a problem with almost every launch that they do because there's not enough product, or the phones are bending, or there's a software problem, or the batteries are exploding, and people still buy Apple. So the product is so good, and we are so dedicated and in need of that product, that even if the technology is awful, that we're still going to go and try to do it. I think part of the reason, too, that there are so many glitches is there are a lot of people who still absolutely desperately want to go to Disney and are logging in and calling in the same time we are. So it's putting an incredible strain on the system. Now, whether, we go back to the idea that Disney this shouldn't be a surprise to them. I mean, they should know that there's going to be an incredible stress on the system every time, and yet it still is really super frustrating. It doesn't really matter what it is, if it's like a DVC Moonlight Madness, or if it's a mini main attraction line on Shop Disney. It's still always frustrating, and also always nerve-wracking to think, you know what, I'm probably not going to get the thing that I want because the system's going to fail or something else is going to happen that's weird. But one other thing that I think is very frustrating to me is, and this happens on Shop Disney, is you want to buy something, you go to buy it, it says, oh, hey, great choice, everybody wanted this, and so it's sold out. And then there's a possibility that 2 hours later it may still be there. Same thing with the article that we posted this weekend about the fact that, reservations are all of a sudden available for people who are have resort reservations. They're all of a sudden there. Now, to your point earlier, Jason, if you didn't follow a website like ours, how would you know that there were all of a sudden things there? And that would be super frustrating too. So I feel like they need to be better on their communication to the people who are their, what we call on radio, their P1, their primary listeners and followers, and take care of them. And I think that's one of the places where they seem to be missing the ball. I don't think they're purposely making us jump through hoops. I just think we have to jump through hoops because they don't seem to have a better system, and that is really frustrating.
Yeah, they're not making us jump through hoops on purpose. They're making us jump through hoops because they can't get their act together on the back end. Absolutely. Yeah. And so here's one thing that you said I wanted to talk about. You mentioned about the P1s, the primary target guests. So there's been a lot of discussion on the internet and in Disney circles. So the biggest problems now this week that we talked about affected pass holders. The pass holders on the payment plan and the pass holder previews for the park openings. So there's been a lot of talk that Disney should be bending over backwards to cater to the pass holders, and these are the ones that are coming back, and they need to do better by their pass holders and this and that. And then there's the flip side of the story that a lot of people are saying is that, well, really the actual problem is that, first of all, Disney has too many pass holders, right? And that's why things book up so quickly, because that's why, like, pass holder party nights or whatever, just like the DVC Moonlight Magic that books up in 30 seconds because there's too many DVC members. Well, pass holder stuff books up in 30 seconds because there's too many pass holders. And so people are saying, well, all right, there's too many pass holders, number one. And number two, they don't spend a lot of money when they come. Like, they're not like the British tourists that come for 2 weeks and stay rack rate at the Grand Floridian and spend upwards of $10,000 to $20,000. Pass holders come. If they're DVC members, they're not spending anything for the hotel. They're getting pass holder discounts on all the merchandise. They're getting pass holder discounts on the dining. Or else they're like going off property to eat or whatever. Pass holders are not spending as much money as a family vacation that a family that comes once every 3 or 4 years on vacation. And that's clearly the case. So I think there's sort of a balance here. And this is, I mean, I know that all of us, well, Spencer doesn't have a pass to Walt Disney World, but he has one to Tokyo. But all of us here are pass holders in one way or the other. Well, you have one, you just can't use it, Spencer, sorry.
No. I have a whole separate rant about OLC's IT systems. Like, that's something we can get into in a little bit.
Okay. But so there's this dichotomy between Disney needing to cater to pass holders, to give perks to pass holders, to make sure that pass holders are well taken care of and not frustrated by systems or lack of communication or whatever. But then the other half of that coin is that, well, if it's this difficult, maybe there's too many pass holders. And pass holders, sure, there's a huge outlay up front if you buy the pass, or there's the monthly guaranteed income from the monthly payments. But in reality, over the course of a year, a pass holder probably doesn't spend as much money at Walt Disney World. Now, like Tom Coyle buying all the merchandise you can see, that is obviously the exception to the rule. But over the course of a year, if a pass holder goes to the parks 20 or 30 times, even then they might not be spending as much money over the course of a year as a family that comes for a week and eats every meal on property and buys tickets and pays the hotel full price hotel rates. Not to mention all of the pass holders that are Florida residents that don't pay anything for hotels or DVC or whatever. And that maybe Disney has too many pass holders. And so there's definitely people out there that have this sort of conspiracy theory that all of these things that are happening, that are pissing off pass holders, there's the theory that that's by design to basically thin the ranks of pass holders. And this was something that actually did happen. I want to say it's got to be at least probably 15 years ago, maybe, at Disneyland. Where, I mean, obviously Disneyland is a very different sort of park, and it has a very different sort of demographic, and a lot of the pass holders at Disneyland are local, many more local pass holders than at Walt Disney World. And the annual passes for SoCal residents were so cheap. And at some point, Disney decided there's too many pass holders. The parks are overcrowded with pass holders. They get too many perks. They don't pay a lot of money. They don't pay for food or hotels. And so they like doubled the price of an annual pass to Disneyland, essentially to purposely thin the ranks of pass holders because they were not profitable customers. And so the question in my mind is that, do we think that's maybe what's happening? Not that they're pissing off the pass holders on purpose to get rid of them, but that they don't really care if there's all these problems with pass holders because they want pass holders to not renew or to cancel their pass or whatever. So what do we think about that?
OLC follows a similar business model to what you're describing. Our annual pass, we have two parks. Our annual pass is about $900. We don't have perks. We don't get merchandise discounts. We don't get parking discounts or free parking. We don't get food discounts. And it kind of sucks, honestly. We get the privilege of coming into the park except for like 30 blackout dates that are mandatory. There's no tiers. There's just the one park and the two park. That's it.
You get the benefit of having good rides.
It certainly
and like
prices
shade
people out.
structures.
It certainly prices people out a little bit. I know a lot of people who go to the park several times a year and they don't get a pass because the break even on a pass here is one visit every month. It's about 12 visits. It definitely helps thin the ranks. And the other side of that is also APs here are profitable customers because they buy the hell out of the merchandise and they always eat the food, even though it's not very good. And they spend all of their time there. People who are actually using their APs, that is. Of course, there's like the rich people who just buy it because they can. But you have that's what our customers here are like, or our guests. And I don't think Disney World could pull off the same kind of thing, honestly. I think that a big part of thinning the ranks for APs would be getting rid of monthly payments and making it only the down payment. It would price a lot of people out. It would definitely piss some people off. But it would probably serve to thin the ranks a little bit. It would make it less accessible.
Well, I mean, the monthly payment plan for pass holders is a relatively recent invention. That didn't used to exist. I want to say 7-8 years ago, maybe, is when that came into existence. So it didn't used to be that way. So there was absolutely a point in time.
When did you feel like there were starting to be too many pass holders?
Like 1997. No, I mean, clearly there was a point in time, and I think it might have been maybe it was like the 2008 recession or something, where Disney clearly invented this monthly payment plan to make it easier for pass holders to afford and therefore attract more pass holders. So there was definitely some point in time where Disney decided to go with this monthly payment plan to make being a pass holder more affordable on a month-to-month basis and to attract more pass holders. Has it gone beyond what they expected? Has it gone too far in the other direction? I don't know. I mean, that's what the theory is in some circles. It's kind of like there's too much of a good thing. I mean, Disney can absolutely track like each individual person's spending and everything. Because they scan your pass when you get a discount, so they know what you're spending. But I don't know whether having less pass holders is necessarily a good thing. I mean, it's certainly, like you said, the break-even point on a Tokyo Pass is like 12 visits. The break-even on a Walt Disney World Annual Pass is less than that, depending on what pass you get. Florida Resident, like Gold Passes, the break-even point is like probably 7 to 8 visits, depending on what tickets you buy. I mean, you could buy a 7-day pass for $400 or $500 or whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, the break-even point is maybe the break-even point really depends on how many days you go at one shot. If you had to buy single individual day tickets every day you went, you'd hit that break-even point a lot quicker than if you bought a 7-day pass. But still, I think, the fact that Tokyo doesn't have to give discounts and doesn't have to give free parking and this and that. I mean, the other part of that is that it's cheaper to eat at Tokyo Disneyland than it is to eat at Walt Disney World with a 20% discount. Well, your food is crap, but it's also not ridiculously overpriced. It's also not ridiculously overpriced. And so, maybe they feel, well, we don't have to give discounts on food because it's not that expensive to begin with. We don't have to give discounts on merchandise because people gobble up the Tokyo merchandise as it is, right? Like, they don't need to encourage merchandise sales like they do in Florida.
It's frustrating. It frustrates me because, I see every other Disney resort gets these perks for the annual passes. And, of course, Tokyo Disney is OLC first and Disney second. That's just how they operate. On the other side of that, I also just got a USJ annual pass for Universal Studios Japan, and they give the 20% merchandise discount. They give the 20% food discount, and I'll go into this when we talk about Tokyo later. But it really felt like I was actually being treated as a valuable customer. I don't feel like I'm getting anything extra other than just getting into the park as a TDR pass holder. I don't feel like a valued customer.
And so here's the thing. Florida pass holders, we get the discounts, we get the free parking, but it's such a hassle to book anything that we don't feel like valued customers either, even though we get all these discounts. I mean, the other thing is we get discounts on merchandise that's garbage that we don't want to buy anyway. There's relatively little merchandise that I would go and actually want to buy, even if I didn't have a discount, or even if I did have a discount. I still don't want to buy a lot of the junk they put out. At Tokyo, there's so much good merchandise that people are happy to pay full price for it. So there's the difference, is that, you say it's feeling like a valued customer, and I say it's such garbage here anyway that the discounts still don't make me feel like a valued customer. I mean, knocking down Universe of Energy doesn't make me feel like a valued customer either. Or, destroying the great movie ride doesn't make me feel like a valued customer. So, I mean, I can absolutely see your point that it would be nice for OLC to throw you a bone and give you some discounts here and there. But the fact is that their annual pass gets you into the parks, and they're two of the greatest parks in the world. You don't feel valued necessarily, but you're still getting a lot of bang for your buck. And in Florida, we are getting more bang for our buck in terms of discounts and stuff, but we're also getting a crappier product with that. So I think it balances out. I mean, I know I totally get what you're saying, and and Universal Studios is the same way. They do a lot. They bend over backwards for their pass holders a lot. Some say more so than Disney, and there's discounts and everything. But then again, the question is there a superior product? They don't have a superior product, so they need to give more incentives to be a pass holder. And OLC has the superior product. So go ahead, Rob.
So one of the things, and I know we're kind of like off topic because we were talking about technical difficulties, and now we're like down the AP rabbit hole. But I mean, I think that a few years ago, like I bought an AP because like I'm out of state. So, I just kind of like crunched the numbers and said, okay, this is going to be worth it if I go, to your point, like, 7 times or X amount of times in a year. But also that at the time that I got into it, it was because it was DVC. I could get a discounted rate on an AP. And then also that they had 20% off of food and 20% off of merch. And they've backed off on that a little bit, which tells me maybe they do see that they're getting to a point where there's too many APs, so they don't necessarily need to put that incentive out there of the extra 10% off. So like you don't get 20% off on all the meals, you're getting 10% off of most food instead. And I expect that like 20% discount on merch at some point to probably go down. It's not something that's promised necessarily across the board forever, so they could certainly at some time when they start re-upping back off of that too if they thought they had too many AP. But I do think that we get a lot of perks. I mean, there was an annual pass holder, preview here, and obviously it was hard to sign up for, as we talked about earlier. So again, I get anxiety about like trying to get in for stuff like that. But they do offer those things, to pass holders. The one other thing that I wanted to bring up was that on May 28th, and I went and looked this up, we had an article on the website that said there were going to be pass holder previews, DVC previews, and Club 33 previews. To my knowledge, unless I'm wrong, I've only heard of AP previews and cast member previews. I haven't heard anything about DVC or Club 33 previews. Have you?
I have not heard anything about DVC previews, and the people that I know that are in Club 33 have not said anything to me about Club 33 previews. Obviously, anybody who's a Club 33 member is an annual pass holder. So whether there's somehow some way to get them into the pass holder previews or whatever via the Club 33, I don't know. I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, I just thought that was kind of strange because I think it was even last week where we still didn't know, when AP previews were going to hit, and then they came out of the blue and then went very quickly. But I really expected there to also be a different tier for a DVC preview and or Club 33 preview. Never heard anything about that. But again, back to the whole AP thing is, I definitely think it would be great if we got more benefits. I think a lot of times you get DirecTV is a great example. I feel like I signed on as a DirecTV customer, and the first year they treated me really nicely, and then after that they treat all the new customers nicely, but they can treat me like garbage and keep running my price up, and not giving me NFL Sunday Ticket for free and all this other stuff. And you call them back and they're like, oh, that's for new people. Oh, so not for your valued customers. I mean, so I don't think it's unique to Disney, but it does suck when it happens.
I don't think Disney's actually as bad. At least they treat all their pass holders the same, whether they're new or not.
Yeah.
But there was a point in time, I know, at Disneyland, I'm not entirely sure about Walt Disney World, there was a point in time at Disneyland where there were different levels of merchandise discounts depending on your annual pass. So if you had like the premium annual pass, you got a 20% merchandise discount. But if you had like the SoCal Select or something, you only got a 10% merchandise discount. So they have done that sort of tiering in the past. They certainly could at Walt Disney World too. I will say that it's probably technologically more complex than they could possibly manage. To look at your pass and swipe it and give it a discount different depending on what level of pass you have. But yeah, I'm not saying like I don't think we get enough perks. I think we get a lot of perks, and I think they're decent perks. But I don't know that they treat us as valued customers even with these perks. And so the reason I say that, and there was a time a while ago where I thought about Disney's perks, whether they're AP perks or DVC perks or whatever. Disney's perks, if you look across the board at the kind of perks that they give out to people, their perks really aren't perks. They don't really cost Disney anything. Honestly, the magnets, those magnets actually cost Disney some amount of money to produce and give away, right? Like, you've got the money to make the magnets, then you've got to pay the cast members to scan your Magic Band and hand out the magnets. That's actually a perk that costs Disney money. But there's plenty of AP perks that cost Disney zero. Like the AP lines for park entry, that costs Disney $0. And the fact is there's no one policing those lines, so they fill up with non-AP guests anyway, and they're not any quicker than a regular line for the most part a lot of times. So that's like a perk that's basically useless. Like, Disney calls it a perk, but it's basically useless. There's no net benefit to the guests, and it doesn't cost Disney any money to give it. And I think Disney is a master at those kinds of perks that don't cost them money, but they can market very nicely and say, look at the perks that we give to our pass holders because we value them as customers. Like an AP line that anybody goes in and doesn't get told this is for APs only. To me, that's not a perk. That's like Disney putting up a sign and hoping people read it. And that's basically all that is. So in my mind, to me, Disney can roll out a lot of these things that they call perks, and to me it doesn't make me feel like a valued guest because they're really not putting any effort into it. And the merchandise discounts, merchandise discounts are fine. They're great for people that spend money on merchandise, but there's plenty of people that don't buy a lot of junk. And so those discounts on merchandise for some people, obviously like Tom Corliss, the amount of money you save with the merchandise discount can probably pay for the pass itself. But there's tons of people that the merchandise discount doesn't really factor into the reasons they buy a pass. And so, it's kind of, I don't know. I just think Disney's a master of marketing and getting people to get excited about things that they call perks that really aren't.
Jason, you were saying about passes. Something I was thinking about earlier is that pass holders, that they don't spend a lot. I sort of disagree, because I know that you probably buy a lot of merch, even though you're saying that it's not up to par with what Tokyo is. I know that I buy an insane amount of merch. Obviously, I have way too much stuff.
Yeah, I think we're the exception to that, though. I don't think we're typical for pass holders.
Okay, but I mean, I just feel like that happens a lot. But I would say on the other end, just generically about AP, I think in Disneyland, that's probably where they're not getting their money's worth, because I think that it's really more of a locals park in Disneyland,
right?
Because there are a lot of people who will buy the SoCal or whatever pass, and they'll go in and they'll eat dinner at home or somewhere else or beforehand, go into the park, hang out, play around, and then leave and not buy all the merch and not spend money on food and all that.
No,
kind of
you're
stuff. But
very right. You're absolutely true. But I guess my question is, would we buy the merch even if there was no discount?
Probably.
Like, maybe not as much, but yeah, we'd still probably buy the merch even if there was no discount. So
it does help justify it.
It helps make you feel. I mean, it certainly makes you feel better that you only spent $15 for a hunk of metal, than $17 for a hunk of metal with some character on the front of it.
I probably do justify it a lot because of having a discount going, well, normally I wouldn't spend this much on a pair of socks or whatever, but I have my AP discount. So now I feel like I'm baller, and I'm just going to roll in and I'm going to buy a bunch more stuff, because if I spend $100, I'm just making money because I get $20 off of it. That's huge. Like,
that's right. It's like cash in your pocket.
Exactly. But the other thing is, I do think that I feel a little bit of like a, I don't know, again, back to baller, of having an AP to be able to say, I get to go in that AP line. You're right. I mean, it's usually you look at it and go, that's longer than the rest, but you know that you belong there, and it's cool that you could do that. And then also buying the exclusive AP merchandise. And to your point, sometimes it is sort of garbage. So I'm excited when it's something good, but I do kind of like wear that with pride when I go, oh, I can get that. I'm an AP. This is for me. I can go get that. But also, back to what we were talking about before about how quickly things fill up and availability, AP stuff usually goes first, because, there are people locally who can run out, grab it, sell it at a premium on eBay, or, they get to it before I can, because I'm not local. I can't just run down and grab something. But I do like the idea that there are things that are exclusive for AP.
And just real quick on that, we don't get AP merchandise, and that makes me upset. Nothing says TDR annual pass holder. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, yeah, but the only reason we buy the AP merchandise is because sometimes it's a tad better of an item than the other junk they put out. Again, I think it's a nice perk, if you want to call it a perk, to have AP exclusive merchandise. Really, it's just a way to get us to spend more money. I think TDR could probably get you to spend more money if they did have AP exclusive merchandise. That, to be honest, so there was when I was in Hong Kong last year with Tom, it wasn't merchandise to buy, but there was a promotion going on for pass holders that if you spent X dollars in a transaction, you got this little stamp, and you collected these stamps in this book, and then if you filled the book, you could turn it in for this suitcase cover thing weirdness. And so you didn't. I mean, you got a discount, but the fact that collecting those stamps and getting that suitcase cover thing was an AP perk made Tom actually go buy the AP, even though we were only there for 3 days or something. So it was like that pass holder exclusive stuff got him to pay extra for the pass.
Can I just tell you, though, one thing that I did that was absolutely as dumb as that, and it felt like the right thing to do at the time. Food and Wine Festival last year, you had to tap in a certain amount of times to be able to get the Minnie Mouse coasters. And so I literally went to Epcot on my way somewhere else to go in, to tap in, to then walk back out, to then go where I was going to go, because I wanted those AP exclusive coasters so badly, and I literally couldn't tell you where they are right now. It's not like I put them into practice or anything like that. Like, they could be anywhere. I don't even know where. I had to have those coasters because you had to like tap in 3 or 4 days out of the Food and Wine Festival to get them. I'm a sucker for it.
But that is where being a local is much more advantageous, because if you go down a week during Food and Wine, you got to make sure you hit Epcot 4 days out of that week. But a local could go anytime during the course of the 75 or more days of Food and Wine and do it pretty easily. So somebody in the chat was saying something about how they don't really respect the local pass holders, but for that's certainly one of the ways that I think local pass holders have a benefit. Even though those of us that come down for a week really try to make it happen, it's much more of an inconvenience for us than it is for locals. But without park hopping, now it's pretty much almost nearly impossible for a person visiting a week to tap into Epcot for 4 days out of a week. It really puts a wrench in your plans.
Well, I hope they don't do something
I don't
like
see that happening again. I don't see that happening. I want to address a couple things in the chat. Spencer, somebody in the chat asked why you have stickers that make up a 25 on your shirt.
Oh,
I know they're not stickers. They look like stickers to me.
They are actually they're like button can badge things. This is a shirt from the 25th anniversary of Tokyo Disneyland, about 12 years ago, I think. I bought it used for about $10. And what these are is they're all the little pin buttons that they made for the first 25 years of the resort, like every anniversary of Tokyo Disneyland, and then also Tokyo Disney Sea when it opened. There's like the first, or the grand opening is here, and then the second, and it's supposed to be like a compilation. It's one of my favorite shirts, and it was also the closest Disney shirt that I could find for this show because I'm in the process of moving right now. So,
all right. Two other things in the chat. So Mandy mentioned a little while ago. Mandy, who's a longtime viewer and watches all of our shows, remembered that at the end of last year, like last fall, I said that I wasn't going to renew my pass. My pass expired in December last year, and I said that I wasn't going to renew it until there was some major change in the leadership of at least Disney parks and experiences, because JPEG was such a problem.
Oh, yeah. I remember that because we talked about it on the marathon show.
We did. We absolutely did, yes. And so there was, I didn't stick to that specifically, but that was actually because I ended up coming down in February or January for a wedding, and was with people who'd never been to Disney before, and so I kind of had to go to the parks and show them around and stuff. So I ended up I ended up buying a new pass in January, but on that same token, so I was at Disney last month when they opened the resorts. I'm coming down again a week from yesterday for when the parks open. I'm coming down in August with my family, so I'm bringing my wife and kids in August. And originally, we were going to stay at Animal Kingdom Lodge, Kidani Village, and spend days in the parks. But when I learned that there was going to be no fireworks, no parades, you needed a park pass, there was no park hopping, half of our favorite restaurants are closed, like Boma, I said to the kids, it's not worth going to Disney. And so I canceled my Kidani Village reservation, and I made a reservation at Cabana Bay at Universal. And I'm going to buy them all Universal annual passes, and we're going to spend like 3 days at Volcano Bay, and we're going to go to Universal, and my kids are really looking forward to it, because they haven't been to Universal very much, only for Horror Nights. And so they're really looking to go to Universal. I'm looking forward to going back to Volcano Bay because I think it's spectacular. And we're not going to Disney. And we probably won't even go to Disney to eat because getting dining reservations is such a hassle. And like I said, a lot of our favorite restaurants aren't open. So, that's about as close as I was able to stick to what I said about not renew my annual pass. Is that, I have an annual pass and I'm not going to Disney that week because it's too much of a hassle.
I'm so glad that we've circled back to the IT problems, because I do want to talk about what happened here. We have about as terrible of an IT service as Disney does, I think. OLC does not understand that they are the most popular parks in the world, probably, or some of them at least, and they definitely have the most avid fans in the world. When they announced that the tickets would go up, they said the tickets were going to go up on Thursday, June 25th, something like that. And they put the tickets up and the website crashed a lot. It was a first come, first serve system. OLC did not think to add server capacity. They did not think to add a virtual queue. They would crash you out to this website. It was just a page that said, "Thank you for visiting Tokyo Disney Resort Reservation Center. The website is currently temporarily busy or unavailable. Please try again later." And so...
But you've got to admit, right, like, how many times has that happened?
Not very much,
over the course
actually.
of, say, the past... Right, exactly. So for the most part, OLC handles things fine.
Hold on, because this is still happening. Every Wednesday, they're still releasing new tickets. I went, I had to fight for August tickets because I wanted a guaranteed entry to the park. I didn't get anything for July originally and had to buy a ticket off one of my friends. But the problem is I spent 6 hours on my laptop, on my iPhone with the TDR app, and with my iPad with the TDR app, trying to buy tickets and just constantly refreshing. And what would be great is if they would have at least added some temporary server capacity, if they had added a virtual queue or some way to handle this, because they knew that this was going to be popular. There are only 15,000 tickets a day for both parks. And they need to make it so much less of a hassle that you don't spend 5 hours constantly refreshing for tickets. I know people on the first day, they spent almost a day constantly trying to refresh this page. Even at 3 o'clock in the morning, they couldn't get in.
Spencer, you act like this is worse than what we've experienced. We've experienced all of those things for every Shop Mini merchandise release, for park passes, for AP previews, for restaurant reservations. We've experienced that over and over again. Right? Like it happened once to you.
Because a lot of us have this attitude that the grass is greener in Tokyo, and the problem is our IT team is probably more incompetent than Disney's. It would not surprise me.
Well, maybe, but it's also until the app with fast passes, like everything, you didn't need to utilize the technology. You could get paper fast passes, and you didn't need park reservations, or you didn't need park tickets, right? Like pre-coronavirus, you didn't need the technology. I mean, you could benefit with it, but you didn't need it. Whereas at Walt Disney World, if you don't have an app that works, or that crashes every other day, you can't access your fast passes. The entire fast pass system for the entire resort goes down. I mean, that's a big difference than Tokyo still having paper fast passes.
I wish we still had paper fast passes, honestly. I still think that digital fast passes completely wrecked the curve for people.
Well, they might. They certainly might have changed things, but
the frustrating thing for me is this will come up later when we talk about Tokyo in like 3 hours. But I don't feel like Tokyo values their guests as much as they should. It's not just APs. It feels like all guests right now with the way they handle this ticket system. It would have been nothing for them to it would have been nothing for them to buy some extra Azure space or whatever hosting they use to up the capacity, or implement a virtual queue system to make us not have to constantly refresh on different devices for hours and hours on end for the chance to get a ticket. The worst part would be when you're...
Would you have rather had a virtual queue system that didn't actually work? Because that's what we got. We got a virtual queue system that is essentially useless. I mean, it's not like it actually does anything.
What's frustrating for me, though, is it feels like such an easy solution.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely, I agree.
I lost my train of thought because you interrupted me.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'll come back to it when we talk about it.
But I totally agree. It seems like it's a very easy solution all the way around. And whether it's OLC or Disney, they should all be able to implement these systems fairly easily and scale them up fairly easily to make this stuff just work. And they don't. And they repeatedly don't. And I think OLC, it hasn't happened as much, but now they're finally starting to experience the same thing. And it will be interesting to see if, OLC actually finally gets on the ball and in a year their system is fixed and it's working better than Walt Disney World's system. That wouldn't surprise me at all, because I think OLC is smart enough to realize that, if there's going to be something that impacts, like they moved to digital fast passes and they don't know how people are going to react, and they don't know if, their system is capable of handling it or goes down or whatever. But I think they're smart enough to at least realize that if things break a lot, they need to fix it. I haven't seen that same realization from Walt Disney World yet. Like, if things break a lot, oh well, let's just blame it on the customer and ignore fixing it and not spend any more money on it. Like, I think the proof, that will be the proof when we see what happens if OLC actually decides to fix some of their systems that they can fix.
I really want to hope that this system won't last very long. I'm nervous about what will happen when the AP lottery we were promised for pass holders is finally implemented, because that's probably going to crash just as much.
Well, I mean, if it's a real lottery...
And I remembered what we were talking about. With the... when you were trying to buy tickets, you go through multiple screens. Like, you go through the day picking, and then you go through putting in your credit card number, and then waiting for the confirmation to come through, and doing the final confirmation and stuff. And the worst part would be when you crash to the error screen in the middle. You would lose the day that you picked. You could potentially lose the chance to get that because someone else could buy it, and then that ticket would be gone, and there would be no more
sounds like Shop Disney
for that day.
Sounds like Shop Disney to me.
It didn't save any of it. Like, you couldn't just.
But hey, did it charge your card? Did it charge your card? Because Shop Disney does all of that. Shop Disney does all of it, and it charges your card. So Shop Disney, they take your money, and you don't get anything out of it. And then stuff is sold out in the meantime. So yeah, I feel bad for you because I know exactly what you're talking about. It's exactly what we're experiencing here.
The point I wanted to make with this, though, is just that, the grass isn't always greener on the other side of the ocean. Our IT team is probably just as crap as Disney's is.
It probably is. But what does make you feel better is when you go on, Journey to the Center of the Earth, that makes you forget about the IT crap instead of, lamenting about Test Track and the sim car and your card didn't work and it doesn't show your car on the screen like it's supposed to, and you still got a crappy ride.
So I just the grass may seem to be greener on the other side, but I'm fairly sure the money is the same color no matter where you are. Just offering another
money is tan.
Slightly different opinion. Maybe we always hear about, because people don't talk about the successes that they have with My Disney Experience and the app. But maybe Disney is happy
people
with
have
an 80% successful. Yeah, maybe they are happy with an 80% success rate because that's how they've determined that's where their whatever break-even point they've come up with is active. And so they don't want to budget more. Scaling costs money. And although it would enhance the guest experience, their trending has shown that people keep coming. People keep buying stuff. When they reduced the AP discounts on merchandise, we kept buying them. I did anyway. As an out-of-stater, we do tend to stay on site. We do also have stayed off site more recently because of more people, and we want a suite and that sort of thing, which wasn't really available for any reasonable sort of cost. But we still buy stuff. We still eat there. And I think in addition to the AP versus non-AP being different populations, I think someone already said the locals versus the travelers are also different populations. It would be interesting to see what the intersection of the group of APs for Disney World versus the group of travelers versus the locals is, to see whether they really have an overabundance of APs, but maybe they have an overabundance of people coming to the parks, period, whether or not they're APs. But going back to the money is money, yeah. Going back to the money is money, yeah. One way to change that is money. But it's interesting that as they've seriously increased the cost of an annual pass, they have seriously increased the cost of your day-to-day passes and your Magic Your Way packages, and the food and the merchandise and pretty much everything. They've added parking, for heaven's sakes. So it's I don't know that it's necessarily they're quote-unquote targeting APs. That's probably part of a larger strategy, again, to see or to make that break-even point come true so that they make the maximum amount of money with the least amount of effort, but also to generally manage the crowds, which they've said in their annual reports and their analyst calls they are actively trying to do. And it's not just that they're being stupid. It's just that the result of that strategy makes them appear stupid or to do stupid things when it comes to guest relationships.
So I will say one thing to close, Rich, and everything you said is accurate, and I understand where you're coming from. But here's the thing. I think if I was only paying $60 to get into the park, like I would if I was at Tokyo, I think I'd have much more tolerance for that than if I was paying over $100 to get into the park like you do in Florida. So that's OLC could probably charge $10 more per day per ticket and put all of that money into tech and make people very happy. Disney, I don't think they're going to be able to charge more per ticket to put money into tech, because they're pretty much at the top end of the ticket price that I think people are going to be willing to pay, at least for right now.
Maybe. We've said that for several years, and we shall see. One would hope.
Well, I mean, this is, I think the next year is going to be pretty much a big reckoning for all of this, because Disney is going to see, and I'm not saying like it's going to turn out good or bad. I think Disney is going to see firsthand what taking advantage of their guests and overcharging and making people pay for stupid things like parking at the hotels. I think, Tom put this on Twitter the other day, that all of that is going to come back to bite them in the ass big time. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. Maybe it's not, but I think the next year is going to be very, very telling as to how people now feel about Disney and spending all this money and having a lesser experience.
Right. It'll be like 2002 or 2009 all over again, slightly different. Yep. But yes, I'm hoping for a big reset, personally.
I think it's overdue. I think a big reset is overdue. Absolutely. So I want to, Kev, it's pretty much time for a commercial break. Kevin wanted to pop in and say something quickly before we go on the commercial break. So Kevin.
Yeah, one of my rare jump-ins. So just going back to the actual tech stuff and the story with this whole Passholder preview thing, we found the link Monday morning that went to this, and I just think it's interesting. We didn't even find it from an email that went to one of us. It was from digging through old links to Passholder events. And
yeah,
to me,
found it. That's right.
Yeah, it's not even that, obviously it was bungled with the notifications. There was no advance notice to say, hey, it's going to be at such and such time. It's that it was just this open link that could be shared. So anybody who bothered to look could find it. And so there was really not that there was going to be any kind of hierarchy to who got it when, but that it just kind of became a who you know or who do you follow. And, I know it helped a lot of our readers out that we shared it out, but it really should never be like that where, the tech aside, even if the tech had worked properly, that it still didn't give everybody a fair chance. So, in my mind,
Sure.
It almost goes beyond a tech issue, and it's just, more of a, almost ethics at that point that you're not giving everybody an equal playing field. Like, what about the people who aren't tech savvy and aren't on social media? Like you've essentially eliminated your older.
They got screwed.
To make a generalization, you didn't give them an equal playing field, or people who don't have those capabilities. So it
didn't matter whether you had a platinum pass or a gold pass or an Epcot After 4 pass. You all got screwed the same. If you didn't read WDWNT that morning, you got screwed no matter what, because we knew what the link was and we had posted it, and 90% of pass holders still didn't have an email that previews were actually even happening.
Correct. And that's my 2 cents.
Yep, very, very good. Yeah. No, you were the one that found that link, so that was kudos to you. And I think a lot of WDWNT followers were very, very happy that they got the news from us, because they certainly didn't get the news from Disney. One other, let's see, just one more thing from... Yeah, some people said in the chat they didn't get an email. They got a notification from the Disney app, which is true, I think. But, I mean, obviously, if you're a pass holder, there's no reason you absolutely need to have the app or whatever. So not sending it via email and sending it via an app notification also excludes a bunch of people. Or if you turn off push notifications in your app, like if you're an out-of-state pass holder and you don't want the push notifications until you get to Disney, that certainly excluded a lot of people. And then somebody in the Facebook chat said they don't scan your pass when you use your discount. They just look at it and apply the discount. That's what they do in Florida. But in California, they actually do scan your pass to use the discount, because California has different levels of discounts depending on your pass level. So it's certainly, the technology's certainly there that they could do that. They just choose not to, because it's probably too hard to program into their system. Let's take a commercial, and we'll be back, and we will continue talking. Well, I think we've covered the technical difficulties issue pretty much. Let's come back and we'll talk about the NBA.
4 panelists, 30 minutes, 1 week in Disney Parks news. This is Parks Center. On Parks Center, the panel and I cover the top 7 Disney Park stories of the past week. From attraction news to transportation scandals to new food and merchandise, we'll cover it all in 30 minutes or less. You can watch us stream live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. at WDWintunes.com, watch episodes on demand at youtube.com/WDWNT, or subscribe to the audio version of the show on your favorite podcast app.
Dreamfinders is WDW News Today's podcast all about the creative culture surrounding Disney parks. Authors, Imagineers, dancers, actors, photographers, filmmakers, and a whole lot more have all stopped by to chat about how Disney has inspired their artistic work.
But I still remember sitting in conference tables and looking across at Michael and Jeffrey Katzenberg, and this sort of little 6-year-old inside of me going, what in heaven's name is going on here?
And we're off and running, and Tony needs someone to lay it out for him. And there's no architect available. So the next thing I know, I'm laying out the pavilion.
I got to tell you, I have not enjoyed a podcast so much. It's just a warm conversation, and a warm and intelligent conversation, which you don't find that often in podcasts.
Dreamfinders, Episodes drop every other Tuesday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcatcher.
WDW News Tonight is our weekly comedy show combining the news of the week, comedy segments, thoughtful discussions, insane characters, parody commercials, games, and more. Watch live on Thursdays at 9 p.m. and become a Wigs member to get access to a bonus post show. Watch WDW News Tonight episodes anytime and live on YouTube, or get the audio-only version on iTunes and other podcast services.
Welcome back to Hour 2 of Pressing Issues. Shout out to Mandy and Doug and all of our Wigs members that are in the chat. And Mandy said, make sure that you join Wigs for $2 a month. You can help Spencer eat lemon cakes. I don't know what that means, but
it's sad. My convenience store actually doesn't sell those lemon cakes anymore.
Oh,
it's one of those
Spencer,
things
you
about
moved to
Japan
the wrong neighborhood.
No, it's one of those things about Japan is when you go to the convenience store, if you see something that you like, you have to buy it because otherwise it might be gone like the next week. It changes all the time except for like the staples. So whenever you see like a new snack, it's almost guaranteed that in a week or two it'll be gone. So you have to buy it then. My lemon cakes are gone and it makes me sad.
Poor Spencer. Spencer, we have lemon cakes at Costco that are really, really good. I'm going to buy you a pack and send it to you. Next time you can get things in the mail that don't take 3 months, because I think after 3 months they might not be so great. But let me know. I'll send you some lemon cakes.
I'll have to go down to Costco. I live closer to Costco now than in my old apartment, so maybe I can go down to the Costco in Makuhari in Chiba and see if they have the lemon cakes. I still have my Costco card, actually. Like, last year, just a real quick thing. Last year...
Spencer, this is like a professional podcast.
I know. Last year when I moved, I got a Costco card for my local Costco because I was going to cook more, and I never did. So maybe I can go down to Costco and see if their lemon cakes are any good.
Yep, just like Tom has a BJ's card because he cooks. Sure. Anyway, Kevin, I should have asked you this ahead of time, and I don't know if you can do it or not. It doesn't need to be quick because we can talk about this for a lot. But Tom's video that he played on News Tonight this past week, that he also tweeted, of him eating the cake at at Gasparilla's at the Grand Floridian outside. If you can find that video so that we can play it for people, because I know not everybody here that watches Pressing Issues watches News Tonight. This video is amazing. So if you can sort of dig that up for us, it would be great to show. But yeah, let's talk about the NBA. So we knew the NBA was coming to Walt Disney World. It turns out they're paying like $1.5 million a day to house everybody at Walt Disney World. And they're going to play some amount of games at the ESPN Wide World of Sports. And so we knew, like, you know, the Disney NBA, the NBA players were going to stay at certain Disney resorts: Grand Floridian, Yacht Club, Coronado. And so we knew that they were going to have to bring in like bigger beds for these NBA guys. And we knew they were going to have to make some changes. They set up practice courts in the convention center at Coronado Springs. You know, we knew they were going to have to restrict access to certain areas of the resorts by the public, which is why, you know, certain restaurants are not opening. Same with Jumbo House at Animal Kingdom Lodge. I think that's where the soccer players are staying. But so there's a lot. We knew there was going to be a lot of things going on when the NBA came into town. And we knew they also talked about having this bubble of players and personnel so to prevent the spread of coronavirus. All their meals are they can't go to restaurants. All their meals are getting catered, and they have to eat together at the convention centers or whatever. And so we knew there was going to be a lot of things going on, but we didn't know quite how badly these things were going to impact the guest experience. And that is what I think really Tom's video drives home the point, is that it's, if they want to close down, a number of the buildings at Grand Floridian and restrict them to NBA players only, that's fine. If they want to take one of the pools at the Grand Floridian and restrict it to NBA players only, that's fine. If they want to not let, people can't go to, restaurants in the yacht club because the yacht club is taken over by NBA. That's a handful of restaurants that you get not able to go to, even though Aeon Compass is one of the best. But, it makes sense that there were going to be some restrictions to be able to have this NBA bubble in place. But then we discovered earlier this week that not only are there restrictions and buildings being closed and guests being inconvenienced, but they're putting up a giant fence. And so, Kevin, why don't you play that video of the fence being installed at the Grand Floridian while Tom is trying to enjoy some cake. So now this was obviously earlier this week. That blue fence you see, that's like an 8-foot high chain link fence that's being installed, is to keep the NBA players and the public separated at the Grand Floridian. I could see that. It kind of is in a resort like the Grand Floridian where you've got some public and some NBA. You kind of maybe need a fence. But you want to talk about not respecting your guests. This is a butt ugly fence. It's like a chain link fence with blue fabric, and they're doing it right through the middle of a guest area. And they're doing it in the middle of the day when the resort is still open. Obviously there's only DVC members staying there right now, but the resort is open and it's cutting through the middle of the resort. And you want to talk about not respecting your guests or not appreciating DVC members that they need to come to support these resorts when they open. That's kind of ridiculous. If I was spending, $400 a night or $500 a night to stay at the Grand Floridian and had to deal with this ugly fence that restricted my access to half of the resort and then put up with jackhammering in the middle of the day, I just think the whole situation is kind of absurd. I thought they were going to just put them all at Coronado and basically completely shut down Coronado, what they did after 9/11, when they just completely shut down. I think it was Caribbean Beach. They just shut down the entire resort. I had kind of thought, well, they'll pick some resorts, they'll shut the whole resort down to the public. Everybody that will be there will be within the NBA bubble, and it'll be fine. It'll be sort of out of the sight of guests. Guests won't notice too much. They won't let guests into those resorts. That's what I was thinking would make sense. Not to take a resort that's going to remain open to guests and put a giant blue fence down the middle of it to keep the NBA players separated from the guests. That to me is kind of absurd. There's so many hotels at Walt Disney World that they could occupy an entire hotel or multiple entire hotels. And that's what somebody in the chat said, that I think the soccer players are staying at the Swan and Dolphin. Like, that's a perfect example. The entire Swan and Dolphin are shut down to guests. They only have the soccer players there. That makes sense. That, to me, is what Disney should have done, whether it's they shut down the Grand Floridian altogether, or they shut down Coronado altogether, or they have a different whatever hotel they want. It does, whatever they want is fine. Shut the whole thing down and let the NBA use it, and it will be a minimal impact to guests. And even if there's DVC rooms there, I mean, they could have shut the entire Grand Floridian down and just moved DVC members to somewhere else. There's plenty of DVC inventory available. They could have moved them. They could have moved them to somewhere else in a bigger room to make up for the inconvenience or whatever. That would be fine. But now Disney's like spread DVC all over the place, that they don't have any hotels, or not very many hotels that don't have some aspect of DVC connected to them. So, it to me, like, that big ugly blue fence is just kind of absurd. And I understand Disney needs to do that to keep the NBA players safe and keep the public out of their hair. I get it. I get it that Disney is making a lot of money by having all of this NBA stuff happen at Walt Disney World, and I'm glad they finally found a way to make some money with visitors not coming. There's plenty of hotel rooms available. I get all that. That all makes sense to me. What doesn't make sense to me is to not put all the NBA players at a certain specific resort and just shut the resort down to the public. Like, that to me would have been the obvious solution. And whether there's DVC connected to that resort or not, I think they could have managed somehow better. But, that's, there you go. That's what you get. You get a big ugly blue fence in the middle of the Grand Floridian. Go ahead. I hear Rob laughing.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I want to make sure to stress is, I don't think that it's like they're trying to keep the NBA players, keep the riffraff away from the NBA players, and that's why they put up the fence. This is supposed to be a very calculated bubble for the NBA. They went through all this trouble to test the NBA players ahead of time. They found like 10 out of 800 of the staff members who tested positive for COVID, and then 25 now, I think, out of the 331 players have tested. So they tested them before they're bringing them in. They don't come in until July 9th. And so I think that was step A, is to make sure everybody who's coming in is COVID free, because you can't do 6 feet apart from each other when you bring these players in. They're going to be, with each other the entire time. And then they bought them these rings that, I don't know if you saw that. There are these rings that are supposed to track and kind of give track COVID and see, they monitor your temperature and your respiratory, and so that they can keep these on, so that they can keep that going. They don't want them to interact with people, not because they're NBA and they're better, but because they want to keep that a clean bubble. And I think that it's really cool that they've gone to that much effort and thought that much through about how to keep this sport happening while still keeping these guys safe. So I think all that's very cool, and I also think it's this fence that's up there is ugly, but it's temporary, and it's going to be to again make sure that these guys don't go near or around that area, that they stay close. So it's really kind of to protect them and to make sure that they all stay safe and healthy. But what I was going to say was,
aren't keeping the guests out; they're keeping the NBA in.
Yes, exactly, because they need, and the same thing with the restaurants and everything else, or them being brought meals. I don't think it's because that they're just better than everybody else. I think it's that they're really trying to contain this thing, because the worst thing that could happen is one of these guys gets it, and then 6, and then it's just done. I mean, it could spread so quickly through this thing. That said, I think that somebody at Disney had a great idea to make this happen in the first place. $1.5 million a day that they're making on this. ESPN is going to be covering this, so the synergy about this, and to your point about them being able to to fill up these rooms that weren't going to be filled up is great. The only piece of it that I can't understand, and I always give people the benefit of the doubt that maybe somebody did think this through somewhere more so than I did, but I don't understand, like you said, why they wouldn't put them all in the same place. Because it seems like you would want them close to the Wide World of Sports where they're going to be playing, or in the case of like the conference room that they've set up for the practice rooms, which again is an amazing idea, putting these hardwood floor conference rooms, making miniature practice courts in there so that everybody can practice. Why wouldn't they put them all at Gran Testino, or are there too many for that? Or why wouldn't they just put them at all Coronado Springs? Or, why Grand Floridian of all places? Because it's your most expensive hotel. It's the closest to the Magic Kingdom. It's right on the monorail. It doesn't seem like there's a reason for them to be there other than the fact that it's an expensive hotel. I don't know why the Grand Floridian. And again, I trust that maybe mistakenly, but I trust someone somewhere had a plan of why they had to be these specific buildings. But again, to your point, I don't get why it couldn't be all of them in one place if you really wanted it to be a protected bubble.
All of Coronado makes perfect sense, honestly. I mean, all of Coronado makes sense. I think it's big enough. It's got the convention center space where you can have meals. And I mean, they're not getting meals because they're better than us, because those meals that they're paying like $45 for a ham sandwich look pretty crappy. If you've seen those pictures, it's embarrassing, honestly. But it would make sense to have them in a bubble and put them all in one place and have the big bubble there. I mean, you've got housekeeping at the Grand Floridian having to go into the NBA rooms and then having to go into guest rooms, right? Like if you had everybody at Coronado, then you'd have housekeeping dedicated only to Coronado, and you wouldn't have any housekeeping in guest areas. It makes too much sense. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why. Other than the Grand Floridian rooms are kind of bigger than Coronado rooms, that doesn't really. Other than that, and still, I think you could put bigger beds in Coronado rooms. It's not like they're all-stars, and you're also only putting like one player in a room, not four. So, I think there was a better way to do it, but. We'll see what. I mean, luckily they're only there for like a couple months, so we'll see what happens.
I don't have a whole.
Yeah,
lot
I mean,
to
I
add.
think they had. Somebody just mentioned this in chat. They had to put.
Sorry.
They had to put all these things into place, simply because most of the NBA players would be like, "Screw it, forget it. It's not worth it to me to get this disease. I'll just not play." So the NBA had to go to extremes to get all this to happen, to make sure the players felt comfortable enough to actually come and play. Because like Rob said, if one player gets it and then it spreads, it's going to be a nightmare. And it's going to look really bad for Disney. It's going to look really bad for the NBA, and all the players are going to be pissed. You've got these people that are paid way too much money to play basketball, and, getting a disease that impacts their respiratory system is probably not something that's going to be good for their career. So, all this had to be put into place to get them comfortable enough to agree to this. And even now, there's some of them are not being, some of the NBA players are not coming. Like, not everybody's coming. So, sorry, Rich, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I don't have a lot to add, but maybe they're trying to create bubbles within bubbles, so to speak, so that there's a Grand Floridian bubble and there's other bubbles, so in case one of the bubbles goes down, not everything goes down. But we will probably never know. I mean, the NBA made, $9 billion with a B dollars last season or something, so I'm sure whatever the NBA wanted to do, that's what Disney is going to make happen. Like you say, the players.
Yeah, and they're paying for it, right?
You got to get them to come. Yeah, you got to get them to come. And so as long as Disney gets their money, they'll do what they need to do.
Somebody in the chat asked, are the beds big enough at Grand Floridian? No, they're bringing in special beds. All of the hotels that are hosting the NBA players, they're bringing in special beds for the NBA players. So,
and originally there was talk that they were not going to be allowed into the parks. And then there was a report later that said that they would maybe make arrangements for it to happen after hours, after the park guests had gone. But if they are truly trying to create a bubble, then they probably shouldn't be going into the parks. I know that it's got to be very tempting, especially if they're bringing their family in and getting 17 rooms per player or whatever. But I mean, as tempting as that is, that almost immediately turns the bubble idea upside down.
Absolutely. So there's so much that could go wrong that I'd honestly be surprised if this works out and like none of the NBA gets COVID. I'd be surprised because there's so many, even with all of the precautions they're taking, it seems to me there's still a lot of things that could go wrong. And certainly I think with the increase in Florida, somebody in the chat said like that they're not even going to be restricted to stay at the hotel, that they're going to be able to go out. They just can't go to the parks, and who knows? But I would be surprised if this worked out the way that they're hoping it does. Would surprise me. But we'll see. Anybody else on the NBA?
Maybe they should just sequester them to the NBA experience because nobody's going to be there anyway.
Well, and they have like practice rings.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. I mean, if it's the NBA experience, right? It should be exactly the same. Yeah, they could just spend their time
just
there.
like the NBA. Sure thing. Absolutely. All right. Let's see. It's so we talked about Tokyo. We talked about the NBA. Oh, let's talk a little bit about Disneyland. And how it's
whoa, hold up. We didn't talk about the reopening of Tokyo. We just talked about the IT problem.
You want to talk more about Tokyo? I'm sorry, Spencer. Please talk more about Tokyo.
Well, I came on because we were going to talk about the parks reopening. We kind of skipped over that and went to the NBA.
You told me you wanted to talk all about the NBA opening.
That's priorities, man. NBA all the way.
No, all right. Yes, that's fine. Even though you were at Universal Studios Japan, while Tokyo reopened, please talk about Tokyo reopening.
I was at USJ the week they announced the reopening. That is different. My giant bag of USJ stuff, though, clearly, definitely says a lot about my priorities.
Is that bag for you or is that for Tom?
I don't have to answer that question.
Okay. Jeez.
The correct answer is it is for Tom. The only thing I bought for myself at USJ was a T-shirt. This is all Tom's Jaws merchandise.
Oh yeah, Jaws.
So Tokyo reopened, and they are not letting APs in, which is upsetting. They promised us that we were going to get a lottery to get into the parks, which we have not heard anything about yet. And they said details will be announced as soon as they are determined, which is meaningless. What you have to do is you have to buy a full day ticket, or there's 3 tiers, excuse me. You have the full day ticket, the 11 a.m. ticket, and the 2 p.m. ticket. The park is open from 8 to 8 every day. So you can get a different value. You get like a certain time of day that you can enter the park to control social distancing at the entrance, and kind of keep the crowds flowing a little bit more throughout the park. There's still only 15,000 people going. So when you look at the wait times, stuff like even Soaring, Toy Story Mania, Journey to the Center of the Earth, Pooh's Honey Hunt, rides that usually have excessively long waits have been hovering, except for Soaring, around 5 to 15 minutes. I think Soaring's the only one that's had a line, and it was 30 or 40 minutes. People are following social distancing measures for the most part. You're actually allowed to take off your mask if you're a sufficient distance from another guest. So they don't really need mask break areas, because as long as you're 2 meters or 6 feet away from someone else, they won't get upset with you if you take off your mask. Just, like pull it down. people are standing on the lines. People are socially distancing. Cast members, I'm hearing, are doing a very good job. I will find out for myself next Thursday. Yeah. I'll be going to Disney Sea to find out for myself. Anything that you wanted to ask about, Jason? Because I know you were interested in this a little bit.
I mean, I think what the big difference is to me is that, and I mean, this is Japan in general, not, regardless of whether there's a pandemic and regardless of whether you're at a Disney park or elsewhere. But I mean, I think the difference between the Japanese culture and the American culture in general is that the Japanese culture is willing to follow rules, even if they don't agree with them, because somebody made the rule and they respect that somebody's opinion. And so, yeah, it's kind of like, everybody's saying now, well, Florida opened and now it's like a COVID hotspot and Disney shouldn't open. I mean, COVID hotspots happen when people don't follow the rules. And so it's, to me, I think certainly the fact that most people in Japan follow rules, and don't, protest and say, I'm not going to come if I have to wear a mask and yada, 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 like you see people spouting stupidity all the time. I think that alone is what makes the Tokyo Disney reopening sort of uneventful on a scale of, is this going to turn into a COVID hotspot kind of thing? And all the people that are...
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, for the most part, people don't care about the mask. That's a normal thing. What people have been struggling with in Japan is social distancing. People do not know how to social distance because Tokyo is a very big city with very small spaces. So, it's just this innate thing to cram into all of the available space. And I'm impressed that people are following it at Disney because a lot of the rest of the city is not. I will get in line at the grocery store, and there will be lines on the floor, and some people will stand on the lines, and then it's almost always someone behind me will just cram right behind me, and they don't observe the line at all, even though there is available markers for them to stand on. And talking about COVID hotspots, when you compare Tokyo to the rest of Japan, we are the most dangerous place right now because we have been spiking for about a week now. We've had every day about 100 new cases through the city. And most of the rest of the country is in single or double digits. I think the next highest is somewhere like 20 new cases or something like that in a suburb of Tokyo. Tokyo comparably is the hotspot. And people are very concerned that we had 100 cases yesterday or 110 or whatever it was. And a lot of these are coming out of the nightlife areas that Tokyo is so famous for, like host bars and nightclubs and places like that. Despite the perceived Japanese affinity for rules, social distancing has definitely been one that people are struggling with here. There's only so much that the mask can do, obviously. I think a big part of it is also social distancing. And when people are in these spaces interacting with people, sometimes they take off their masks, but also they just don't social distance. And it concerns me that we are seeing this spike in the last couple of weeks. Maybe we are headed for our second wave while Osaka and USJ are sitting pretty at 10 new cases a day or something like that.
So you think that people are wearing masks, but they're not social distancing, and that's causing a spike? Or you think it's at the park versus...
No. This is outside of the parks.
Okay.
I'm talking in general just about our problems with social distancing in this country and why it seems like we're spiking. Because a lot of these new cases that we've been seeing in this spike for the past couple of weeks have been traced back to clusters in the nightlife district of Tokyo. So, right. It is concerning that you have all of these cases spiking here. But at the same time, it seems like Disney isn't affected as much because people are largely following the rules, probably because cast members are yelling at them too. And they are wearing their masks and they're taking the proper precautions. I doubt that a cluster will start at Disney. But we are still the COVID hotspot compared to the rest of Japan, like how Florida is right now for the U.S., and that's what concerns me and a lot of other people, I think.
So I think, like you said, that it would surprise you if, like, a hotspot is traced to Disney in some way. This is what boggles my mind about the people who are saying that Disney shouldn't open, that it's too soon, that Disney is being irresponsible and people are going to get sick. Universal Studios has been open for like a month now. And no one's saying that about Universal. No one's saying that Universal should have never opened. No one's saying that Universal is the hot spot that caused the giant spike in Florida COVID cases. No one's saying any of this about Universal, but they're saying it all about Disney even before Disney has even opened. And so I think if you can't follow rules and you go out to bars and don't wear a mask, it's going to happen no matter where. And Tokyo or Florida or California, it doesn't matter where, you see it happening, right? And so the problem with Florida isn't the theme parks. The problem with Florida is not Universal reopening. Universal reopening did not cause any additional COVID cases in Florida by reopening. I mean, it's just they have rules in place and they have people to make sure that they follow those rules. I think the biggest concern in my mind is not that Disney is going to contribute to additional COVID cases in Florida. My concern is that Universal is doing a very good job at enforcing the rules of masks and social distancing, and my biggest concern is that Disney will not be as diligent as Universal, because you've got people coming to Disney that people that come to Disney generally seem to feel more entitled and less restricted by rules, and so you're going to have people come to Disney, and if they refuse to wear a mask, what's Disney going to do? I think Universal is going to tell them, put on the mask or you need to leave, and I'm hoping that Disney does that. But if there's going to be one park that enforces rules better than another, it's going to be Disney. It's going to be Universal enforcing the rules better than Disney. That's where the problem's going to come up. So if the
and that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, okay. If the people that are saying that Disney shouldn't open, if the people that are saying that Disney shouldn't open are saying it not because Florida's a COVID hotspot, but because they know that Disney's not going to be able to enforce the rules, then I can understand their point. But I don't think that's the rationale for a lot of those people. Sorry, Spencer, go ahead.
No, it's fine. I just, I was going to say, people are saying that at Disney Springs, the cast members aren't doing as good a job at enforcing social distancing and mask wearing. If Orlando is everything like I've heard and like it is at USJ, then they're probably doing a great job and telling people to stay socially distanced and wear their masks whenever they catch an infraction. The thing is, Universal cast members or crew members / team members, depending on what resort you're at, tend to be more proactive about telling guests when they're doing something wrong. Disney cast members seem to, whether it's in Florida or even some cases here, really, tend to be less upfront and confrontational about approaching guests and saying, hey, you have to stop doing this, unless it's a very blatant and obvious danger to safety. And it seems like they aren't pushing wearing masks and social distancing as a blatant hardline danger to safety, like, say, if a guest is attacking another guest or something.
Oh, they usually don't really worry about that too much, as we've seen.
Well, I'm using it as a hypothetical situation of like something that would be
I get it.
A very high profile situation.
I get it, totally.
That they would need to handle.
I think maybe that's some of the what people expect from Disney. Maybe it's the fact that Universal empowers their cast members to do more than Disney does. Maybe Disney doesn't like its cast members yelling at people for breaking the rules, and Universal says, if a guest is breaking the rules, you need to tell them. So maybe it's different management techniques. I don't know what it is. We'll see in less than a week's time how this all pans out. But I think so. This sort of segues into the California thing where, California is in the same situation as Florida for the most part. And we talked about this a bit last week, how Florida has told the theme parks, create an opening plan and we'll approve it. And California says, we're going to create an opening plan and you have to follow it. And we're not going to be in a real hurry to create that opening plan. So you just have to wait for us. And now with the restrictions in Orange County on indoor restaurants and things like that, Downtown Disney is still going to go ahead and reopen this week, but very, very limited. And restaurants can only have outdoor seating and this and that. And the Disney parks that were supposed to reopen on July 17th are pushed back now indefinitely because Disney has to wait for the government to come up with a plan for them how they can run their business. And it really is sort of interesting to compare and contrast Florida versus California because, again, the spread of the coronavirus in both of those states is mostly, I think, from people going to bars and not wearing masks and not following social distancing guidelines. And it happened in both states, and beaches or whatever too are all sort of in the same category there. And what's really interesting is that Florida just very recently, whether it was yesterday or today, created an amendment to their law. So they came out and said, bars can't open because people are going to bars and not wearing masks, and coronavirus is spiking. So Florida said no bars. And then they created an amendment to that law that said bars can open, but only at 50% capacity, just like restaurants. Because when you think about it, the problem with bars and social distancing happens when you pack tons of people into a bar, right? It doesn't happen at a restaurant. So whether you're eating food or not is kind of irrelevant if you're sitting at a table that's 6 feet away from the next party. And that was the argument that bars had, was that it's not about the food. It's about how close people are in these places without masks on. And so Florida, intelligently enough, came up with an amendment that said bars can reopen and sell alcohol as long as people are 6 feet away and capacity's capped at 50%. California's apparently not smart enough to figure out that, bars and restaurants are basically the same thing. They're both indoor spaces where people need to stay apart, and it doesn't matter whether you're eating food along with your beer or not. But anyway, yeah, so, clearly the theme parks, which are mostly you're outdoors when you're at a theme park, and it's easy to social distance, especially with a reduced capacity. Clearly the theme parks are not where the coronavirus is spreading like wildfire. And I think, putting more restrictions in place like Orange County in California did, and it's delaying the opening of Downtown Disney, versus Florida saying, jumping the gun and saying bars, and then finally realizing, hey, we make a lot of money on liquor taxes. Maybe we should let bars open and just make sure they maintain social distancing like every other business that is allowed to open. I think there has to be a sensible way to go about these things, and it certainly looks to me, as we said last week, certainly looks to me that Florida and California are on sort of different trajectories with a sensible way to do these things. And that's having a negative impact on Downtown Disney. Does it even make sense to open anything at Downtown Disney at this point? They said they're going to open, and they still can, but who's going to come? I don't know. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see first day when that's open. Well, maybe not the first day. The first day people will probably come. Second or third day, like we experienced at Disney Springs, it's likely to be pretty dead there, just like it was at Springs. So we'll see.
Hey, Jason. So,
Yep.
commenting on the Disneyland thing, I do think people will come because I think that just like we had in Florida, there are a lot of people who are missing the Disney magic. And I think that when Disney Springs opened up, it was very limited as to what they had. And then, when they opened up World of Disney, which, if they can open up World of Disney in downtown Disney, I think that that's reason enough for people to come to get one, just a little bit of that magic. I don't know how they're going to, keep people away efficiently from the parks because of how close that is to how close downtown Disney is to the parks, but they'll definitely have to block people off from there. But I do think people will come back. But just touching on something you talked about earlier about the COVID situation in Florida, and would cast members at Disney enforce the rules as much as Universal? I think they will. We talked a little bit last week about how I said we stopped in Jacksonville and how we had felt so safe in that Disney Universal bubble, and then we get to Jacksonville and no one was wearing masks and in the restaurant, and how scary that was. I felt really safe at Universal and at Disney. And there was a time where my son came out while we were at the boardwalk to bring me something. I was over on the the Bellevue side, and he came to bring me something and forgot his mask from the room. And the cast members were on him very quickly to the point where it kind of scared him. Like they saw him, and instantly said, "Sir, you need to put your mask on." And he just he was kind of embarrassed that he had forgotten it. But they were very quick to enforce that. So I think differently from a cast member stopping a little kid from running in the park, or trying to enforce something else. I think that this is a different situation, and I think that I feel like Disney will be ready for it and will enforce it, and that that they'll keep to that, especially because this is a big thing about their reputation. If we get a lot of COVID spikes that can be tracked back to Disney, that's going to be a big PR problem for them. So I do think that it's in their best interest to invest a little bit of training in these folks to make sure that they can recognize when people aren't wearing masks and go through some training exercises as to how they should handle it. But at the same time, I think a lot of people go, well, Disney should Disney open up or should they not? And I think that the difference between Universal and Disney is Universal's already open. With Disney, they haven't opened yet, and so there's still a chance to stop that. But when Universal opened up, the numbers were low. When Disney is opening up, they're seeing the highest numbers that Florida has seen through this entire process. As a matter of fact, on yesterday, they were 400 shy of the record day that any state has had, which was New York. So they had over 11,000 cases yesterday. They had 10,000 today positive in Florida. Those are big numbers. And anybody who just looks at Florida in general goes, why would Disney open right now? Because they haven't pulled the trigger, so to speak. They haven't opened the gates yet. But so I think that's why people are kind of saying, hey, maybe, should they stay, closed or should they not? We talked in Park Center at the point that it's probably getting too close to pull the trigger to stop it now, because you've got cast member previews this week, AP previews. We've got all these theme park passes that everybody has fought, like we talked about at the top of the hour, to get all these dining reservations. I can't imagine the nightmare that would happen if they decided to backpedal on this. And I think the only thing that would cause them to do that is if the governor just said no. And I think we've learned the governor is not going to say no to Disney. So I think the park's going to open. But I think that it's still scary to look at how big Florida's numbers are in general. And I just think that even though Universal and Disney, I think, will do a good job, they just happen to be in what is the target worst state in the country right now.
Sure.
That was an argument I was actually going to say that, I'm too close to my camera. The Universal opened up when the numbers were still low, and they're already open. I think that it would have been prudent for Disney to look at where things are now and reconsider. We're obviously too close to that, I think, at this point. But it would have been really prudent of them to have looked at that and said, hey, maybe now that the numbers are too high, we should maybe backpedal on this a little bit, I don't think that it's wise for them to open, but it's too late at this point,
If it's unwise for Disney to open, then it's just as unwise for Universal to stay open. It's really irrelevant whether Universal's already open and Disney's not. It's that if it's too dangerous to open a theme park, it's too dangerous to open a theme park whether you were open yesterday or not. And I think that's
absolutely
Disney's argument, right? That's the governor's argument. That's Disney's argument.
That's the second part of it, but that's not what we're focused on. We're not focused entirely on Universal. Yes, they probably should reclose. That's how I feel, at least. But that's not going to happen. It just won't. And
but
the reality of it is, we can debate as much as we want about whether Disney should reopen. It's going to happen. They're not going to back down, and I think we all knew that it was never going to that they were never going to back down.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure that Disney got word from the governor's office that he wasn't going to force them to close. And like I said last week, short of like an unmitigated disaster where half the population has COVID, it's not going to happen. But as I said several weeks ago, I felt, and as Rob said, I felt safer at Universal than I did at the grocery store. And so therein lies the problem. Therein lies the reason why Disney is going to open. And therein lies the reason why there's not going to be a spike in COVID cases that's traceable to Disney. Simply because it's going to be safer to be at Disney than it is to be virtually anywhere else in the state of Florida, except like your house. Because there's
only if they
it wasn't
are
until last week. Right, if they are militant about following the rules. But here's the other problem, is that because of the spike, Florida mandated, like when I went 2 weeks ago, Florida didn't have a mask requirement for indoors. And that's why when I went to Publix, 3/4 of the people weren't wearing masks. But at Universal, 99% of the people were wearing masks. And so there, I think, is kind of what the problem is going to be, is that now Florida finally has said, okay, you have to wear a mask even in grocery stores. But grocery stores, I don't think, are enforcing it anywhere near as well as Universal and Disney will. So, to be honest, the safest place to be, other than your house, is going to be somewhere that has capacity controls, social distancing rules, mask requirements, and enforces all of those things. And honestly, in the entire state of Florida, the only place that I've seen that enforces all of those things is Disney and Universal. I'd love for somebody to prove me wrong and say, hey, there's someone else in Florida that enforces those rules, but I don't see it. I haven't seen it.
That's what the hope is. I don't want to be on WDWNT in a month and see massive COVID outbreak traced to Walt Disney World. That's not what any of us want to see, and it's still concerning nonetheless to see the numbers in Florida, even if Disney is militant about these things like Universal is, and they are telling people to wear their mask and enforcing social distancing. It's still scary to see those high numbers in Florida and watch Disney parade along with their reopening anyway.
I can understand that. I can understand that. Somebody in the chat said they live in Florida and are unaware of such a mask requirement, but there is absolutely a mask requirement for Orlando and Orange County that people need to wear a mask when they're out in public, which wasn't the case before like 2 weeks ago. And so that's the problem. A lot of people are saying the problem is the people that wear the masks don't wear them correctly. That's a different problem. I actually saw people at Universal, team members at Universal, telling guests that they need to pull the mask up over their nose. So that was a good thing. But again, as long as Disney can enforce the social distancing and enforce the mask requirements, it's going to be plenty safe. Maybe getting to Disney through a COVID hotspot of Florida might not be safe. And honestly, I'm more worried about flying through the airport now than I am about actually being at Disney. But as far as my trip goes, my plan is I think Disney, Universal are safe. I think maybe traveling through the airport may be the most dangerous thing that I do, and I sure as hell aren't going to the grocery store. That's basically how I'm going to handle things next week.
Yeah, I agree with you. The airport is the part that scares me the most. And again, because I've been down there and because I saw the same things you did at Universal and at Disney, that they do seem to be doing a great job with keeping people safe. That the airport's the one that's concerning me. And I literally, because of going down, I thought about it a couple times. When we went down this last time, I drove. It's only like a 9.5 hour drive for me, but it's still like. I'm going to fly down this time, but I'm not feeling really good about it because, again, it doesn't have that same bubble feel that Disney and Universal do, where they're going to enforce all these rules. And especially after all that information came out early on about how many of the TSA had gotten, in Orlando had gotten COVID or tested positive.
Yeah, that's where TSA PreCheck comes in handy because you don't have to deal with the TSA agents as much. They're not going to root through your stuff most likely. So I'm glad I have that. That makes me feel a little better. But yeah, no, I think my plan for precautions is to take a whole bunch of hand sanitizer and use it as I walk through the airport and keep my mask on and, hope for the best and get out of there as quickly as I can. Then head to Disney and pretty much not go to any place where the mask requirements that are now in place for Orange County are not enforced. I don't want to go anywhere that doesn't enforce them, which to me includes most grocery stores, but anywhere else, like the airport at least is in Orlando, so they're going to enforce the mask requirement at the airport. I'm glad about that, and we'll see what happens. But, all right. Somebody in the chat said planes are full, which may be the case. I'm flying on Southwest, which has come out and said they're not going to sell the middle seats through at least September 30th, which means Southwest planes can only be 66% full at the very maximum. To me, that's a safe thing. And, if you choose to fly on another airline that fills the plane 100% full, well, that's certainly a more dangerous. American and United are filling the planes, including the middle seat. I think that's more dangerous. So if you have to travel, then flying on an airline like Southwest that doesn't sell the middle seat is going to be better. It's all a risk tolerance for people, individual people. But we're hitting the 2 hour mark right about now, so I just want to put everything out there to the panelists. If anybody has any last thoughts, any last words, anything else they want to say.
I will just say that I'm very interested in seeing next week what happens. Again, I'll be there following Jason around anywhere he goes, and I'm really excited about it.
That's because you want me to buy you dinner.
I mean, that's not wrong, but also
Rob, if it makes you feel any better, that's what I do with Tom. I follow him around Tokyo so that he'll buy me food.
Yep.
No. I enjoy 100% hanging out with Jason in the parks. It is a great time. I'm a little bit I'm anxious about it. I don't think at this point, like I said, that we are so close that it would take something ginormous. And if 11,500 people isn't in one day isn't enough to make them change their minds about opening the park, I don't think anything will be at this point. So, again, I'm just very excited to go down there and see how they do this. And I really have the utmost confidence that Disney's going to do a good job. And, the next time you get on here and start talking about it, hopefully you'll be singing the praises of what a good job they did in enforcing these rules and making people feel safe and helping to bring back the magic in a very unmagical time.
Yeah, and along those lines, my family, I'll speak for them since they're not here. If we were Florida residents, we probably would have already been to Disney Springs, and we'd probably be looking forward to at least walking through the Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom and just enjoying and absorbing the Disneyness of it all. But we live in New England, and it's the getting there, whether by plane or by train or by automobile, and staying in hotels and using rest areas and all of that other complications that we're just not quite ready to do yet. And that, I think, is more than anything else what's preventing us from packing up and taking a trip down to Florida right at the moment.
I know a couple people who live outside Tokyo who are feeling the same anxiety about traveling here. They're still not selling middle seats as far as I know on the domestic flights. And when I took the Shinkansen, the bullet train, back and forth from Osaka, it was basically empty. And there were seats left open everywhere for social distancing without, having to not sell them. But it's still, there's the anxiety of traveling to these hotspots or just being in, enclosed spaces with other people for who knows how long. You don't really know how well they're being sanitized. You don't know if someone is asymptomatic, even if they're wearing their masks.
The worst is if you get stuck on a ride.
It just, I definitely feel the same idea about travel. And I think a lot of people, no matter where you are in the world, you're going to feel the same way about travel right now. It's just one of those assumed risks, I suppose. If you choose to go to Disney World or to Disneyland or to Tokyo Disney or wherever, you're going to have to put yourself through those risks, I think.
Yeah, just a couple more things in the chat. So somebody said Delta's not selling middle seats either, which is true. So yeah, I would absolutely be flying Delta or Southwest because they're the only two airlines that I know of that are not selling middle seats. Somebody else said something about their mother went on a plane and saw people in the middle seats. For the most part, what they mean by not selling middle seats is that they're not forcing anyone to sit in a middle seat that doesn't want to. And so Southwest is operating their planes at a maximum of 66% capacity. But if you're in a family of three and you want to sit in the one row, then you can absolutely sit in the middle seat. You're doing it by choice. They're not forcing people to sit in middle seats between two strangers. So, for example, when I flew home on Southwest 2 weeks ago, I had a whole row to myself, but that's because there were families that were, filling up all three seats in a different row. So it's not that they're not saying the middle seat will be open on every flight. What they're really actually saying is that no one will be forced to sit in a middle seat if they don't want to. Somebody asked what the capacity is. I don't know. People think it's 25%. That kind of makes sense to me. I don't know for sure. But Shanghai opened at 25% capacity, so that number makes some kind of sense. Anyway, any other comments from the panel before we wrap this thing up?
I hope I didn't take up too much time talking about Tokyo, but it was a lot of fun to come on the show for the first time.
No, Spencer, you did great. I think people in the chat seem to appreciate your Tokyo perspective, so I think it was great. And you're welcome to come back and talk about Tokyo whenever you want. Unless
I might take you up on that.
But yeah, no, I mean, with Tokyo being open now, that's certainly relevant.
Yeah,
somebody in the chat said, "Go ahead."
No, go ahead.
Somebody in the chat said there was not a single "Shut up, Spencer." So yeah, people are.
That's because Tom is not on this show, and I'm very glad about that right now.
So you're welcome to come back on Pressing Issues anytime, except for when Tom's here. Then you're not going to want to come on.
But you can't come until you get Jason's stuff.
That's
I
right.
have Jason's bag
I don't need to have this
behind
stuff.
my computer, like right there.
I don't need to have this stuff. I just need to know that you shipped it. How about that? Mandy needs a connection. Mandy needs a connection to the Beauty and the Beast popcorn buckets.
I need a connection to the Beauty and the Beast popcorn buckets.
The last thing I'll say, Rob, is that you won't hurt my feelings if you admit that you have much more fun following Jill around the parks than me. At least that's what she says. But
last time I got to follow Steve, I got to follow your mom around, so that was kind of cool. And then she tells stories about both you guys. So
right. And that's why we didn't invite her this week. So she won't.
Just
be
for the record, I expect Jason and Rob at some point in Tokyo, and I will follow both of you around, and not just because I want a free meal.
Oh, we are coming. Without
I want
doubt.
to be there so badly, Spencer. I'm very jealous.
I need other people to come to Tokyo other than Tom. I do have a good time when Tom visits, but it would be nice to have other visitors.
As soon as they let us in, Spencer will come.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. That's going to do it for this week of Pressing Issues. Tune in next week when we will be reporting on Sunday night after the parks have been open for 2 days. It should be exciting. It will be one heck of an experience. I'll say that for sure. And I'll be broadcasting most likely from my room at Old Key West. And maybe Rob will join me. I don't know. We'll see. But stay tuned. Tune in next week. Tune in all this week to WDWNT.com for news as it happens. We're going to have reporters at the parks every day, including the AP preview days. So check every day at WDWNT.com or download the WDWNT app for notifications every time we post a new article. Join the WIGs if you want to support WDWNT and help Spencer get more lemon cake.
Yay, lemon cakes. Be awake.
We'll see you all next week. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Good
Stay
night,
safe.
everyone.